All right, today we are diving into a really fascinating story that just popped up online. It's an alien abduction account that, at first glance, seems totally unique. But, as we're about to see, the details slot perfectly into a much bigger mystery that's been building for decades. Okay, let's get into it.
And this is where it gets wild. The entire story hinges on this one absolutely chilling statement supposedly made to the witness. We followed your line for 237 years. So what on earth could that possibly mean? We're going to unpack the story behind that claim.
So where did this all come from? Well, the whole account is from a super detailed testimony posted on Reddit. It's a first-hand story from somebody claiming they've had a lifetime of these really bizarre structured encounters, and that gives us a pretty unique, modern data point to really dig into.
So here's the gist of it. The witness is reporting 3 distinct abduction events, and the first one happened when they were just 10 years old. The story involves these strange beings, some kind of medical procedures, and the slow, deliberate reveal of a long-term plan that's all about their family.
And the timeline they lay out is incredibly specific. It all kicks off in 2013 with some kind of procedure on their head. That's followed by years of weird after effects, not just nightmares, but also developing these abilities for lucid and even precognitive dreaming. Then things escalate. In 2019 and 2021, a being they call the Watcher shows up, supposedly enhances their senses, and then finally restores their memories, revealing what this has all been for.
But who or what are these beings? Now, this is where the story really starts to click into place with a much wider history of abduction accounts. Let's take a look at the anatomy of these abductors.
The witness describes this really clear hierarchy. You have these short grays that are basically technicians, doing the hands-on work. And then you have this tall, blue-skinned watcher who acts as the supervisor. This setup is a dead ringer for the multi-tiered structure that researchers like David Jacobs and John Mack have documented for decades. It's this recurring motif: tall overseers and short workers.
And this isn't just a coincidence you see here and there. The pattern is huge. Some research suggests that this exact structure, tall supervisors directing shorter technicians, shows up in over 40% of documented abduction cases. That's a remarkably consistent detail to find across so many different stories.
Okay, so next up is one of the most baffling parts of these accounts, this technology of control. How do you manage the pure terror someone would feel in a situation like this?
The witness describes this very specific, almost procedural sequence. It starts with, the totally natural human reaction of just intense fear and panic. But then that's immediately cut off by a clear, telepathic command heard right inside their head. And the result? Instant, bizarre calm. Sometimes it's even described as euphoria, completely washing away all the fear.
And again, this idea is far from new. This method of telepathic control has been a central piece of some of the most famous cases in history. You see it with Betty and Barney Hill back in 1961, in Whitley Strieber's famous book Communion, and even in the mass sighting at the Ariel School in Zimbabwe. Researchers like the late John Mack pointed out that this kind of telepathic soothing just doesn't line up with how normal dreams work.
So, we've kind of covered the who and the how, but what about the why? Well, this brings us right back to that incredible opening claim, the one about a plan that's been going on for centuries. 237 years. Just let that sink in for a minute. That number, if it's true, implies a plan that isn't random at all. It suggests something incredibly long-term, patient, and focused on something very specific within this one family line.
This idea actually has a name in abduction research circles: generational abduction. It's a theory, first really explored by researcher Bud Hopkins, that these experiences aren't just one-off events. Instead, they target specific family lines, almost like a long-running genetic study. And this Reddit story, it fits perfectly into that pre-existing framework.
And here it is, the explicit reason, given directly by the Watcher. We abduct your family line for its psionic abilities. Well, that completely changes the narrative, doesn't it? It's not a random encounter anymore. It's a purposeful, long-term program to cultivate some kind of psychic trait. So the ultimate goal, as it was told to the witness, was for them to develop these psychic skills and then have children to keep this psionic lineage going. And this agenda was apparently so important that the Watcher even claimed to have intervened in a totally bizarre teleporting car incident just to save the witness's parents' lives, all to make sure the family line wasn't broken.
Okay, so we've looked at the beings, the methods they use, and the alleged motive. So now let's put all these pieces on the table and see what the complete abduction blueprint from this account looks like.
When you lay it all out like this, the connections are, well, they're undeniable. Every single major piece of this very modern story, the types of beings, the use of telepathy, the focus on a family line, it aligns almost perfectly with themes that have been documented in abduction literature for over half a century. The consistency is just remarkable.
And that's exactly why this story, whether you personally believe it or not, gets people who study this stuff to sit up and take notice. The real significance isn't about proving this one specific account is true. It's about recognizing how neatly it fits into a much larger, incredibly persistent, and so far totally unexplainable pattern of human experience.
Which leaves us with the million-dollar question, right? Are all these recurring details, the calm voices, the tall supervisors, the generational plans, are they evidence of a consistent, objective reality that's actually happening? Or are we just hearing the powerful echoes of a shared modern myth that's taking shape in our collective minds? That's the puzzle.